Let's be direct. If you are serious about Power BI data modeling, you cannot rely only on imported data. You need to leverage custom tables to build advanced structures like dynamic parameter lists, complex grouping keys, and custom date ranges. DAX gives us many functions to achieve this, but only a handful are truly essential for daily professional modeling. Today I've broken down the 10 most effective techniques for generating tables in Power BI. We cover everything you need, from quick enter data to the complex, powerful calculated tables built with DAX. And then stick around because I'll show you the one critical table, the +1, that every single serious Power BI report needs for robust filtering and time intelligence. Let's dive into it. The first method to create a table inside Power BI is enter data. So it's simply here, I click on enter data. Then I'm going to have this column where I'm going to put ID, and then I put, for example, US dollar, and then second I'm going to put as euro. This column is going to be my ID column, and this column is going to be my currency. And this table is going to be my parameter table and parameter for currency. If I load, then I will have this table. Okay, great. Now I have my param currency, right? Euro and US dollar. To be honest, I only use this method to create measure table. Inside my measure table, I make the column hidden from my client view, and I put all of my measures inside this table. Because I find the other methods that we are going to see better to create this kind of parameter tables. For example, for this table, adding data is not that straightforward. However, if you want to add data, you need to go to Edit Query. And here you hit this button, and there you can add another line if you want. For example, if you want to add sterling pound, etc. here. So now I'm not going to do it. And this is our first method. The second function that we use a lot is generate series. So in table view, I'm going to get table tools, new table. Imagine I want a slicer where I have my predefined topN values, right? So for that, I'm going to create a table that has my topN values. So topN2, because I have another topN there. Generate series, the third one. My start value is going to be 10. My end value is going to be 100. And my incremental value is going to be 10 also. If I hit enter, I will have this table where I host my predefined values for topN, right? The third function is going to be data table. For example, I want to have a parameter table where I have units for in my case, the oil production. Then I need a parameter table. For that, I can use data table. And this simply again, I'm going to go new table. I'm going to call this param units. Here I'm going to use the function data table. And inside data table, it wants me to put a name. Name is the column name. I'm going to put first ID. It is going to be integer. I often use this because I want to, for example, sort according to this integer, etc. I always prefer to have integer. Unit, and this unit is going to be string. I need to put the type of each column. So now we have defined the column names, and here I'm going to put the data. Let's go one line down. I need to put in curly brackets. Inside curly brackets, I'm going to, again, for each line of data, I need to put another curly brackets. And then I can say first unit is going to be oil in kilobarrels per day. Kilobarrels per day. And second, then I'm going to have my second. Sorry, there's a mistake here. This is parentheses. Okay, for my second line of data, I need again curly brackets. And there I'm going to put my second line, which is 2, and it is going to be gas in billion cubic meters, right? Because it's text, I'm going to put inside double quotes. Now we have our data. I close parentheses and I hit enter. This is our table, okay? My fourth method to create a table is select columns. This is a method that I use very often, and I use it in two ways. The first way to use this is to get from the existing table the data and then reorder in a manner you want or add some other information about this, especially if you want to create X tables, etc. So for this, let's go to the table tools again, new table. Here I'm going to call this param X. This is to change axis, for example, and here I'm going to use select columns, and select columns is going to want me a table, and this table, if it is an existing table, I can simply get from my oil stats. What I want to get is the year column from this table, and I want to call this column as X, which is the axis, and basically it is going to be the year column from this table. So I get the year column here. And I want to mention that this ID is going to be a year column. Basically, because if I want also quarter column, I will put that in the quarter, right? So I'm going to have another column which I call it ID. And that column is going to be simply a data that is going to repeat itself, which is year, right? What this function is going to do, this function is going to bring me the years from my table. So I have all of the years from my fact table, and I want in front of them to put year. So that's how we do it. This is repeating itself, but then we will come back to make it as distinct, right? And the second way that I use select columns is basically, if I go to the table tools, I'm going to create a new table. I want to make select columns to work for me as data table. I'm going to call this param segmentation. And here I'm going to use select columns in a way that I put the table myself. So let's see select columns. And inside this select columns, basically we need to put a table. But to put a table, I can put the data of my table myself. So for doing this, I can put inside curly brackets. This is my curly brackets. And inside these curly brackets, I'm going to put lines of my table. Let's go a few lines down. Here I'm going to open parentheses. I'm going to put each line inside parentheses, right? It's my segmentation. Basically, I want to segment the production countries and make them either major, important, potential, or low touch. So my first line is going to be ID. After definition of the data in the table, I'm going to put the names for each column, right? First group I'm going to call major. And major production from 300,000 kilobarrels per day to 1 million kilobarrels per day. So this group is my major group. And then I'm going to go to my second line. I'm going to simply copy them because I'm going to have 4 lines of the data here. I'm going to change data 3 and 4. My first category was major. Second is going to be important. Third is going to be potential. And then fourth is going to be low touch. I only needed 4 lines, so I take the comma out. And then I need to give the name of each column. So my first column is going to be ID. And in this column, I want value 1. Basically, when you put value 1, it is going to get the value 1 inside each line. So here it's going to be 1. And then I can simply go to the next line. And I'm going to copy this again because I have 4 of them. Alt enter, Alt enter. And the second column I'm going to call segment. And third column is the mean of production. And fourth column is the max of production. So actually we need to change also these ones. So here it's going to be from 100,000 barrels to 300,000 barrels. I'm going to get it here. And this one is going to be from 1,000 to 100,000. And this one is going to be 0 to 1,000, right? And these are going to be value 1, value 2, 3, and 4. Means that for ID it's going to get the value 1, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. For segment it's going to get the value 2, the second ones, and this third one for min values and max value for fourth one. Let's close parentheses, hit enter. Yeah, now I have my table. This is my parameter table which I use for segmentation. I actually prefer this method to data table. You can try to do the same thing to see how it will be different. Okay. The next function, function number 5, is going to be distinct. Just now we created a param x. So as you see, we can either use already distinct here to make this only distinct values. So now I have only distinct values, but also I can create another table where distinct is itself a creation of a table, right? And often we use this for creation of the key, for example. So for that, I'm going to, again, new table. I'm going to call it param department. And I'm going to basically say distinct department from my oil table, right? And you have the departments from your main table. Why we need this? This will be our bridge table because I have department name in my oil fact table and gas fact table. And if I want to have a dimension table and can use a bridge between these two tables, I use, for example, this function, okay? I'm bridging with this. My next function that I use also often is going to be values. Values is basically doing the same thing. So if I create a new table, param ISO, and in this case I'm going to use values and then take the ISO number from my oil table. Therefore this is going to give us unique values of those codes, right? And the difference between values and distinct is when you have a relationship with the fact table. If your fact table has more values than the dimension table, the values function will make it visible in your table that you are going to bring it in your visuals. Meaning that even if you have a blank row, this will be counted in your visuals. Whereas distinct function will ignore that row, right? Basically, that was the main difference between distinct and values, and depending on the situation, you might need one or the other, right? Here it's a bit different because I'm creating the dimension table basically from the fact table. But if your dimension table is coming from another table but has also the values of the fact table, but all of the values of the fact table are not in your dimension table, in that case values will consider the blank row, and that will be a better option for you if you want to count that and not miss the line. But if you need to only count what you have in dimension table, in that case you will use distinct because you basically want what you have in your dimension table. Okay, our next, and basically I can say the most important function that we have for calculated tables is going to be summarize. I use summarize in, I can say, every report that I create. Summarize allows you to do a lot of things that you cannot do with the simple measures, or your measure would be huge or maybe not possible, right? And for summarize, for example, you can use pick values, dynamic pick values. What I'm going to do here, if I go to the table tool, I'm going to create a table that has all of my production in the countries in one table, right? So I have a relationship between dimension, country, and my fact table. I'm going to call this param production, and in this param production I'm going to use summarize, right? And the table that I'm going to put here is going to be oil table, and what I need is year from this table, from oil production, and from my dimension table I'm going to bring the country, and then I'm going to create a column production, and this production is a measure that is the oil production, which is the sum of the oil production from that table. And if I hit enter, this is going to give me a table in my Power BI, right? We could create this table in our visuals as well, but for different reasons we might need to have this table also here and then add columns or change even the summarize here, right? So with the summarize you have possibility of working with different tables and making into one table that you might need in your modeling and then different use of the data that you have. So this was our function number 7. We can go to the function number 8, which is also a table function, and it is filter. I can already use filter here and filter summarize this table. And I'm going to use, say it, I want only when the oil production is not empty. So not is blank oil production, right? Close parenthesis. And then you will have a table here with your oil production with country and year that is not empty. And again, in visuals, you could create this table. But why this is important that you can do it here? Because here you can then create columns, for example, to create peak values that I have covered in another video that you can go and watch. But this is like foundation of a table that you will need for other kind of calculations as well. We can also use filter in a different way, right? Imagine I need a table from my fact table where department is number 1, right? So parameter department 1, I'm going to filter my oil table, and in this oil table I'm going to say department is equal to department 1. Yeah, so you have a table where it only has department number 1, right? That was our function number 8. Let's see now our function number 9, which is summarize columns. And basically for summarize columns, I'm going to create a table. I'm going to just call it aggregation table, and this table is going to be aggregation on departments in a specific way. And here I'm going to use summarize columns. In summarize columns, I'm going to use different columns, but basically I want department column from oil table, and then I want year column from the same table, and I want also kilograms of oil production. But I want to filter my table to have only, it could be also the tables that are related with this table, right? But I want only kilobarrels per day of the production more than 100, right? And it's going to give me an aggregate table I might need for different calculations. So this is another calculated table using summarize columns. Okay, function number 10 is going to be union. Union function is going to allow you to get together 2 or more tables that are similar to each other. I'm going to use as an example that I often use when I want to create my dimension tables from different fact tables. Here, let's call this dimension country. And in this dimension table, I'm going to get the countries from my gas table. I'm going to use distinct value, ISO code from my gas table, and then I'm going to have another variable which is going to be oil countries, and this is also going to be a distinct ISO number from oil countries. And then I'm going to put return, and I'm going to return union gas countries and oil countries, right? And there you have it. You will have, sorry, oil countries. And here you might have duplicate also. Therefore, to be sure that there is no duplication, I put distinct again here, right? Great. Okay, as promised, my last table is going to be a table that you need in almost every report that you have, and that is going to be a calendar table. The best way that I find since many years to do the calendar table, it is the calendar table that you want to create according to your fact tables and the data that you have in your fact tables, right? I'm going to just start creating the table for the calendar, because I have also a calendar table here. I'm going to call this calendar 2. I'm going to get max date. This is going to be max of department study date from my oil table. And then I'm going to create another variable for min date, minimum date, and this is going to be minimum of department study date again from my oil table. So I know what is my minimum date and maximum date. This is ideal because it means that you cover everything, and when you bring your calendar in your visuals, you will not have the dates that are not in your context. And then if you, for example, have two fact tables and this department date is in gas table and also oil table, then you get the minimum of the minimum, right? You add another minimum function and say you want minimum between minimum of oil production and minimum of gas production, right? You use maximum between these two tables also. And then I'm going to put return, alt enter. I'm going to use calendar, and this wants me a start date and end date, which is going to be minimum date and maximum date. This is going to give you the calendar, which is a simple column from minimum date to maximum date. I highly recommend that you watch my calendar table where I explain in depth a lot of things about the calendar and everything that you need to know to have different sortings from quarter, month, to weeks, etc. I'm just here going to add one column, add columns. Add columns also itself is a table function, and you could use add columns to create also table from other tables, or even you put your tables data inside, right? And here I'm going to simply add column to this calendar table, which is year. And this is going to be simply your function of date, but the date that is in our table, right? If I close parentheses, I will have second column. So don't hesitate to go watch my calendar video where I add quarter, month, week, and then I sort them quarter, month, week, or quarter, month, or month, week, etc. that you will need eventually in your reportings. That wraps up our deep dive into the 10+1 essential table techniques. If you want to keep mastering your DAX and Power BI skills, be sure to check out the related videos I've linked below. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.